Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 201. This is the first, technically it happened last month, but I think it bled over into March. This is the first time in a while, like in a year or two, that I didn't do a stream for Steam Next Fest. Even the one beforehand, that I had to kind of rush through it, and I only got to play like half the demos I wanted to. I still made a stream for it. I didn't do one this time because I'm gonna be honest, there wasn't that much that interested me. I kind of wish that there was a way to search within something like Next Fest and exclude certain tags. I kind of wish that, just out of curiosity, I could exclude the roguelite and roguelike tags. Specifically roguelite. That one seems very popular. There was this meme that was probably a bad meme, like in its overall point, but it was like, every indie game is like this. And I think like one of the things was, it's like Undertale. It's like, what the fuck? No, it's not. You don't play a lot of indie games. you don't play like small games. But I think one of them was roguelite. And roguelite pixel graphics. Oh my god. It's like an unceasing torrent. And it's like, so the thing with I discussed this a while ago. I think it was when I played Nuclear Throne or something. But I've come to realize that the rogue-like, or let's just do the gen. A lot of people seem to really like the phrase rogel that I use. I don't actually even say it that often. But the rogel qualities, the random generation, and the run-based structure of the game isn't... I've come to realize I don't think of it as much of a genre. It's actually more of, like what I just said, it's a structure. In the same way that you could contrast linear versus open world. It's a structure for your game. And playing a lot of different roguels, I realize that if I like the base game and its mechanics, then you can get a ton of mileage out of the actual randomized run-based structure. But if you're just kind of like whatever, then there's really not much for you. there's I would almost say that there's even less. Because I think about some of the roguels I've played and sort of bounced off of, and I think, if there were just some handcrafted levels for me to go through and progress, I'd probably work my way through this, I probably would, but knowing that within 30 minutes, I can basically figure out how much I like it, and then knowing, okay, well, this is basically gonna be the game. This is gonna be the whole game. It's not really going anywhere. This is the core of what I'm dealing with. I'm just going to be doing slight variations on this over and over and over again in perpetuity. It kind of just kills my whole enjoyment or kills my interest in a game. I think there's plenty of more linear games that, again, might have like a more standard progressive structure that... Maybe I'm like, okay, well, it's a little simple at the beginning, but then it keeps on adding things as you go on, and then it gets more interesting. And I get why it's such a popular genre with small developers. It's because you get a ton of bang for your buck, practically infinite bang, depending on how quickly the player gets tired of your game. Compared to something that is all handcrafted. This is the same reason a few years ago procedural generation was all the rage. That was like a big selling point, I think No Man's Sky was like procedurally generated planets. I think that game was sort of a turning point. Man, Minecraft should not have been quite that influential. I remember when Dead Space 3 came out and it had like a meaningless, stupid crafting system because Minecraft, and I was like, okay, we've run the course on this. We got to give this up. At least that was my perception. I don't think the previous games had crafting systems. What was I saying? I feel like I went on two different tangents. Oh yeah, procedural generation was a similar thing where it was like, okay, is this just kind of being used as a crutch because you don't have the resources to create a more intricately handcrafted world or, progressive series of levels or something like that? And I feel the same way towards, I mean, in many ways, roguelites are the whole randomly generated thing, layout is just an extension of that. It's just, I guess it's just has more baggage. it has more things associated with it that are kind of stapled to it, of like the run-based nature and the randomized item selection. Pick 3 things. I say this being a guy who loves Vampire Survivors. And in fact, I'm going to be talking about the Vampire Crawlers demo later in this episode. But yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of wish I could just exclude all the Rogel games. It's just like, it's really not much of a selling point. It's not very helpful for me. It's like a bonus thing. Like, show me something that has a really interesting core gameplay experience or a core mechanic or a cool setting or something like that. And then we can talk about how it's different every time you play it. Well, in any event, we're going to move on to the comment review. I'm going to actually timestamp it this time. I always have to like click around the video to see when I start talking about the comments. So we have one real question from last time, and I don't know why, but I had to go to the video itself and click on newest, sort by newest to find this one. They don't want you to know. I get notifications about these comments, but they don't show up on the studio, like on the comments page on the video, nor do I get them, what was I? Whoa, I just lost my train of thought. I got a message from someone that like derailed my whole brain. Anyway, let's talk about this question from Ryan. Now, so first of all, I think, so last time I was talking about how, a lot of people couldn't get the 2xKO demo. Ryan did get in and offered me a key or a code, whatever they call it. And I said, no, I don't want to put Vanguard on my computer. So, yes, I could have played it through a connection I had, but also, I'm a liar. Have you ever considered that I'm a liar? There's also this very handy guide he leaves about how to get pussy from playing weird games. That was a big tangent I went on. You got to start with open with something recognizable, but not too casual. No Fortnite or COD, but something like Zelda or Resident Evil. If they put, see, that's funny because when I was a kid, many people would have called Zelda a casuals game because it was for baby Nintendo children. If they play games or watch others play, then they have a greater chance of sharing their experiences and latching onto it. If not, go with something they've probably heard their friends talk about their boyfriends play. Dude, that's actually so real. You can get, speaking of roguels, if you could drop a couple like Hades, Silk Song's not a rogel. Metroidvania is another thing that's more of a structure than a genre to me. What else? Helldivers? Ooh, those are some like girls' friends boyfriend games. That's maybe they've heard of them, but the ladies, horror games are safe. You got to go a little deeper. Horror games are safe. Ladies love Silent Hill and Fear and Hunger 2, but only 2 do not start with the first. And love to hear them explain. They love to hear me lord dump. Start talking about weird witchy rituals and alchemy, and they'll listen to anything. And here's where I got to pull out the stop, Ryan. I feel like this is a biased critique. I feel like this is a biased... There's a slight perspective bias in this. I don't actually know how many women would be like... I don't think that they're Puritan, evangelical... They're holding up the cross when you bring up the alchemy. But I don't know if they're going to be like seduced by my knowledge of witch rituals, or witchuals, if you will. That's when Elmer Fudd does them. I'm doing witchuals. That's when you talk about the real nerdy shit, because you've gotten the cool quote-unquote niche games out of the way. If this doesn't work, then don't bother. Some people aren't worth it and won't give you the time of day regard. The way you phrase this is like, she doesn't know about Silent Hill. I'm ditching that hoe. I felt that was a public service to share with any of you guys who want to seduce the ladies with your you gotta play Fear and Hunger 2 to impress the women's. Game rating time. What are your over, under, and accurately rated pre-Doom PC games? I chose Doom as an arbitrary inflection point because I feel that is the start of most discussion from people outside of the classic PC game sphere. Mule is banned. No, I have plenty of other games I could talk about. So pre-Doom PC games. So anything like... I think I picked one game from 1993 on here because I'm like, it was in development before that. Let's say 94 is when the impact of Doom starts to appear actually on store shelves. So I went back through. This is actually fun. This question inspired me to go, I know that I wrote a bunch of different blog posts on the old Taigen Moon Cellar blog, which, if you don't know, is how the Cellar began as a project. It was a blog I did after I graduated high school, and I was stuck inside because of COVID. And I would, every single day, I would review a new retro game. And I would just go on, like, My Abandonware and click random, or just click around and find something that looked kind of interesting, and then play it for a bit, and then write a little blog post about, just giving, like, an impressions, like, well, a quick mini review. And I did that for a few months before kind of evolving into a channel. But this was really fun. And going back, I went back through the old Cellar blog posts, a little bit of memory lane. There's some cool stuff that I played in here. I actually realized that the way I'd set up my WordPress site, you could not read the old blog posts, so I spent like 2 hours I don't think it was 2 hours, but I spent a while figuring out how to actually set it up. So you can actually go back to my website, and if you go to the Cellar section, you can read all the old blog posts and articles that I wrote. So I mainly want to focus on things that I find underrated. Underrated being... they're like, no one talks about them, but I think that they're cool. Because they're just... Yeah, talking about something that's underrated, I feel like there's a lot of just really cool games that are simply underrated in like the very literal sense that very few people even talk about them. I've got a couple overrated. I've got 2 overrated ones. But let's start jumping through these. So the first one is, where did I click on it? Crush, Crumble, and Chomp. This is from 1981. This one's really cool. I think these are all cool. And some of them you might consider to be accurately rated, depending on what you've heard. So Crush, Crumble, and Chomp is it's from 81. Released on DOS, Commodore 64, Apple II, and a few more is what I wrote. This is like, how would I I'm trying to think of a modern example of something that's like this. This is a game about being a giant monster and causing the most destruction possible. So this game has a really cool like monster sort of creator system. So you pick a body type, and then you get points to spend on various different monster abilities. There's a couple preset ones that are based on like classic monsters. I'm just looking through the screenshots I have up on the post, on the original blog post, and there's like a Godzilla thing. There's like a Kraken. There's a Mothra type. There's like a giant robot. And then you're just set on, there's only 4 maps. But they've got like a mix of cities and different buildings and water and stuff. And some monsters can go on water, or they have an easier time on water than land, or the opposite. I think some of them fly. And you're just trying to wreck shit up. You get an objective before the level. It could be like destroy property, eat a bunch of people, or just survive a certain number of turns. It's actually like kind of turn-based, because the humans send the military after you, and then they kind of get to run around a little bit and reposition, and you're kind of locked in place while that happens. So it's not all happening in real time exactly. But there's some really cool, there's like a mild kind of amount of strategy, but it's just all based on like really simple, dumb fun about destroying stuff. I'm reading some of the mechanics. There's a hunger mechanic. You might go berserk and lose control over your actions. It's a really cool premise, and I unfortunately can't think of any. Man, this would be such a great. I liken it at the end of the post to a cool Flash game that I would have played as a kid. Such a fun concept. I really wish that something like this got revisited. Being a monster and then just like a cool arcadey thing where you got to accomplish different objectives, and it's so neat. Yeah, Crush, Crumble, and Chomp. Next one, continuing on the monster theme, is Mail Order Monsters from 1985. This was actually co-developed by Paul Reich III, or Reich III. I don't like, that name. Who, over his career, this is the guy who made Archon. This guy did The Unholy War. He did a couple of these. He continuously iterated on this hybrid action strategy model. And Mail Order Monsters is a really cool early example of that. This was actually published by EA. And the whole idea is that you get this selection of, how many are these? 3. You get like 12 monsters to pick from. They've got the classic big dinosaur. There's like multiple big dinosaurs. There's a giant crab. There's a giant squid. There's like a plant. There's flying monsters like a giant wasp. There's just like a giant called the hominid, who I guess is like a classic giant humanoid. And then the goal is that you get to... Oh, right. Okay. So you assign stats to your monster. And you've got like traits. You can give them weapons. You can give your crab a flamethrower. You can give them bonus abilities, like they've got different oh wait, no, you don't assign stats. Sorry, I'm remembering this now. You don't assign stats. You just pick weapons and items. There's like a weird RPG system to it. They have different stats and different special abilities based off of what kind of monster they are. And then you are let loose on a field. And you fight other monsters. It's kind of it's not quite a fighting game, not in a traditional sense, but you just have like an arena. You've got an arena where you're stomping around fighting other monsters, and then after every fight you upgrade their stats, and you can give them weapons, and you can give them fucking grenades. You can give a Stegosaurus a grenade launcher. I remember, yeah, I wrote here, it's a little clunky because it's like a game from 1985 and it's trying to do real-time combat and it's a little weird, little stiff, but again, really fun idea. And it's just like, again, just like cool, simple, arcadey fun. Next, I want to talk about Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit from 1987. So I talked about Pinball Construction Kit in a previous video, but Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit was a very similar concept just for shoot 'em ups. So this is a really cool, like full-featured game for the time, from being from 1987. It's like a mini development kit for making your own shmup, essentially. You get to design like all the sprites. There's a relatively involved sprite editor. You can control the physics on tons of stuff. You can control all these little parameters. I'm looking at the screenshot I took of like the player, and it's like genuinely almost like working in an engine. It's basically giving you, the regular player, dev tools. You can control like how many bullets they fire, how many lives you start with, speed, how long the bullets last. You can allow the player to shoot in different directions. You can control things like collision. You can design all sorts of different enemies. You can control like, the speed of all these things. I control like sound effects and stuff. It's fonts. You can change the backgrounds. Yeah, you can mix and alter the audio of sound effects. Oh, hey, actually, I didn't realize. I forgot about this. I'm skimming through my blog post. This was a game that was played by a guy named Ray Larrabee, who later went on to have a career at Rockstar Canada and worked on Grand Theft Auto and Max Payne. He is responsible for making the font for GTA, the font of the GTA logo and the Mass Effect logo. Huh. That's so neat. And this is a game that allows you to literally edit typefaces. What a cool little detail. This is one of those really, man, I guess there's like RPG Maker. But just these games that really put the power in your hands to make something. I'm trying to think of modern games that have something like that, where create your own such and such. Yeah, I think that another thing that could make a comeback is these sort of construction kit games. Fighting game construction kit. I guess we have versions of that. Like, you can just download things like Mugen and Character Factory. But I don't know. There's something kind of neat about having a game that kind of introduces you to these concepts. Mario Maker. Mario Maker is probably the closest thing to something like that. Dune 2, The Building of a Dynasty. This is from 92, just around our cutoff point. This is actually generally considered the first RTS game. Like in what we would... There's like strategy games from before this, but this is very... this is what, like, one of the first ones you would look at and say, this is an RTS. It was actually made by Westwood. So this is all, you can almost kind of think of this as a prototype for their later games, or a proof of concept that, you know, the other ones wouldn't be tied down to the Dune license. This is also, I'm not sure. I actually don't know. I've never read the Dune books. I don't know if this is actually based on the second Dune book. But it is a very, what we would now call a traditional RTS. Hang on, sorry. Herzog 2 on Genesis apparently is considered one of the first RTS games. So this is like the second, which and it apparently inspired this game. Yeah, so this is a game... So you basically pick from one of the three factions from the Dune series, the Atreides, the Ordos, and the Harkonnen. and then you have like a creepy advisor who is like, do this, meet this quota from spice harvesting. And of course, in order to do that, you got to fight over territory. And to fight over territory, you're going to be building buildings with builder units and generating troops. And it's cool. It's just like a really cool early RTS with some actually fairly deep mechanics that are based around like the economy of the spice market and all that. It's pretty fleshed out in terms of RTS systems and base building. It's definitely more of a base building, amass a big army kind of game. And I remember this one playing really well. Like, you could go back to this, and the graphics are a little... Honestly, I actually think it still looks pretty good. It's got a really nice aesthetic to it. Probably like a little bit clunky. Doesn't have all the QOL stuff that a modern RTS would have. But a really cool little game to check out if you're into retro PC games and strategy games. Those were like I could probably pick up a couple other ones. But now I kind of wanted to talk about some games I think are a little overrated, or maybe not quite as good as some people have told me, or some people don't. They aren't. Okay, so the first game is Castle Wolfenstein. I don't like Castle Wolfenstein that much. I've played it before. I remember I had to get footage of it for oh snap, a recent video. I forget what it was. Might have been Mac Gaming? I don't remember. I had to get footage of Castle Wolfenstein, and I don't know what it is. It's like, I get the concept. I just thought it played really like clumsily. A lot of I remember the patterns of the guards being kind of random. Maybe this was just the whatever system I emulated it on. I think I played the Apple II version. That might have been my mistake. But I just remember like every time it reset, there'd just be like horrible fucking like flickering and sound and like audio, and then it was like really tedious, and it didn't control well. It was very clunky. I get why the concept was intriguing. I really hated playing it. And the other one was, this is going to be a more obscure pick. Alternate Reality: The City. Now, this one I made a video on this. This is one of the first 10 videos I ever made, I'm pretty sure. And it's a concept that's super interesting. I think, at least for the time, it was very, very novel. It's from 1985. And the whole idea of alternate reality, the city, because this is a game with its own, the reason that it's a subtitle is because this was meant to be a whole series. The premise of the alternate reality series, the plan, was that they were going to release this first game, The City, and then that would act as a hub world for 5 sequels that were actually more like expansions. And remind you, this is on floppy disks. So this is actually fairly innovative for the time, that you would so you'd be in the city, and then there would be an expansion game called, I think, Alternate Reality: The Arena. And it would be all based around gladiatorial combat, and there'd be a whole storyline in there. And you would go to the arena in the city, and then it would be put in the disc for the arena. And then you'd put the disc in, and you'd be in a new game. And it's a cool idea for the time. Nowadays, there would be no need. Technologically, we don't need. We have DLC, we have expansions, we have terms for these things now because they're very normal. But in 1985, that was pretty unheard of. There's a couple games that allowed you to carry some save data across. Wizardry very classically allowed you to take the same party through the first 3 games on one save file. but yeah, the whole idea of this, of alternate reality, of the AR series, was that it would be across, like, it would be one character, and it would be not even like separate games, just this big expanding game. And then so the guy who made it, Philip Price, he was like, okay, we're gonna release this on, dude, this came out on a bunch of consoles: Atari 8-bit, Commodore 64, Apple II, Mac, Atari ST, Amiga, DOS, TRS-80. I forget which version he made. I think it was the Atari 8-bit one. And he programmed it to be, to make the saves cross-compatible. And then the publisher, I think Datasoft? Yeah, Datasoft was the publisher. They were like, okay, we're going to port this. And he was like, tell the programmer to program it in a way to make saves carry across games. And they were like, okay. And then they didn't do that. And like the Commodore version came out and it was a completely locked off game. And Price was like, fuck this. And just quit. And never finished the series. Good God. So he quit, and then, like, that was partially, he had started development on the next game called Alternate Reality: The Dungeon. And so, like, 2 guys had to come in and finish the dungeon. And I believe you were able to use... Oh, no. I don't even think you were. I don't even think they even implemented the... Because it was like, at that point, why even bother? The whole cross-save feature. And I found this whole story fascinating. It's also, like, has a lot of weird... The game itself, the lore, has a lot of weird comparisons to The Matrix. I think that the Philip Price wrote a really long post years and years ago, or I think it might have been an interview or something, where he was talking about how the whole idea of the game is, I remember it starts with this big bombastic cutscene intro of like a spaceship coming down to a city, and then suddenly you're in like a fantasy city, like a Dungeons and Dragons-esque city. And the whole idea was that you would actually have been abducted by aliens, and the whole AR series was all about, it was all going to be a simulation. Like The Matrix. It was literally like you were in The Matrix. And he had this whole thing about, he was like, yeah, well, I had a conversation with 2 brothers in 1989 about this series I was going to do. And I just randomly met them at a restaurant. And then The Matrix came out. Did they rip me off? I don't know. And like, to his credit, he did not directly say that the Wachowskis ripped his game idea off. That he never even finished. But yeah, that was where the series was going to go. There was going to be like 6 games, and then in game 5 you were going to reach the end. You're going to get out of the city and you'd be on the spaceship, and then game 6 would be about like you could fucking destroy the Earth or something. You had all these choices that you could make. You could wake everyone up from the Matrix, or you could go back into the simulation. So I found this whole story really fascinating, and then I played Alternate Reality of the City, and I was like, this game is boring as fuck. For being the only one that he actually completed, it feels relatively bare bones. It is essentially just a big hub. It's a big city that you can walk around, and you can go into buildings and get into randomly spawning fights and level up and stuff, and you can like join guilds. There's no story. There's not really any characters in any significant sense. There's no real progression. You can find some hidden items around. It's basically just walk around a city and have fights, and there's no ending, because it was supposed to be the first of like this big expanding thing. It was just really boring. At least the dungeon is more of an actual dungeon crawler. Like, it's a video game with a start and an end. And you wouldn't believe it, but when I made my video on AR, all of these guys came out of the woodwork and were like, I played this the whole summer when I was 7 years old in 1985, and it was the best game I ever played. And I'm like, yeah, man, what the fuck else were you gonna do in 1985? Listen to Ronald Reagan speeches? I'm being mean. But I really just got annoyed with all of these, like, I don't know, it was like so nostalgia goggles. It was like killing me. Like, and then I had this realization. This was actually one of the things that made me want to take more time on videos. I had this realization in the shower. It was a literal shower thought a few months later. And I realized that alternate reality, the city, is not that much of an RPG. I guess it is, technically. But really, you can think of it as more of a survival game. It's actually more about surviving the city for as long as you can and seeing what you can find and discover and map out than it is about accomplishing some kind of specific end goal. And I think that from that point of view, I understand the appeal a little more, because that's not a style of game that would really exist for like decades, honestly. And so when all of these like Gen Xers tell me about how much they love alternate reality, the city, I can kind of see the appeal, but I don't think it's a very good game. So that was my overrated thing. I had to kind of get that off my chest. Anyway, I hope that was satisfactory. And as for things that are accurately rated, I don't know. It depends entirely of your preconceptions of mail-order monsters, I suppose. Now I want to get into some really interesting news stories that came out today. So, here's Jeff Kaplan of Overwatch fame, the Overwatch guy, did an interview with Lex Fridman, that kind of strange guy who, every time I look at him, I get this kind of metallic taste in my mouth. And Kaplan was sharing a lot of really interesting anecdotes from his time at Blizzard. I haven't gone and watched the full interview, in part because I don't really like listening to Lex Fridman's weird, uncanny voice. But also because it's like 5 hours long. I might get to it eventually, because I've seen a lot of interesting highlights and little snippets from it. But there's this one I want to zero in on. Here's the headline. This is from Eurogamer, courtesy of Connor Maker. Whatever. Former Overwatch lead claims he was given a horrid ultimatum. Meet revenue goals or 1,000 developers would lose jobs. Yeah, you heard me right. So here's basically what happened. Overwatch was a very successful game. It had its ups and downs, as most live service games tend to have. Sometimes people don't like the balance and all that. But it was like financially a success. It was very sustainable. Probably, I imagine it had to have been profitable. It was a moneymaker for Blizzard. Hugely valuable IP. And like brand name, all that stuff. Blizzard, and I think Bobby Kotick as well, our beloved, had this idea where they said, let's do esports. Let's make Overwatch into an esport. And this surprised me because I didn't realize that the Overwatch League didn't even launch until like... Oh wait, it was 2016. Huh? No, wait, 2018. to 2023. Yeah. Technically founded 2017. So this was like a fucking disaster. I don't know if you guys know about this, but the Overwatch League, the OWL, was a total disaster because of, Overwatch probably could have sustained a competitive scene of some kind. There's enough enthusiasm for the game, certainly. I mean, fucking TF2 has a competitive scene. It's got a little one, but it goes because people love the game. Overwatch probably could have had something similar or maybe bigger. But the way that the Overwatch League was sold to investors was more than the moon. It was like 2 moons, or maybe even 3. Bobby Kotick was going around literally telling them that this was going to be the next NFL. He got like the Kraft family, who are like literally, were they on the Patriots or something, on board with this, and he was selling them forget the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm going to come up with 100 analogies for how scammy this was. He was selling them the damn what is the biggest bridge in the world? Biggest bridge in the world. He was selling them the Danyang Kunshan Grand Bridge. Okay? It's over. It's 540,682 feet. Wow. Anyway, and you look at this, and there is no way that this is sustainable. I remember watching a clip from a guy who worked in the World of Warcraft esports, which again is something that was just little. It was like a side thing. It was, like competitive PvP. And, he did like commentary and stuff for WoW esports. And he was like talking about watching Blizzard make these promises, like from inside the esports department at the company, watching them make these promises about Overwatch, and literally like this caused him so much stress because he was like, this could sink the entire esports sector. So many people are going to get burned by this. And guess what? They were. Because it was inherently not profitable enough. They had all this fucking bullshit with like the teams, like the city-based teams just made like no sense. Like there was a London Overwatch team. This is a video game. No one does this stuff. No one, I don't know. Some people thought it was cool. I thought it was so tacky to have like, what is it? Like the soul whoever's, and also, oh my God, the funniest thing about the whole like city-based structure, the league structure, I remember hearing this story about, I think it was on the Trash Taste podcast, and the two Brits, sorry, I shouldn't call Sea-Dog VA a Brit. He's a Welshman. The two UK residents, or at least, guys who were born there, they were talking about how they met up at one point to hang out for like a few days. Like one of them was visiting the other, and one of them was like, "Oh, hey, the Overwatch League finals are right now, or their World Championship or whatever is right now. They have a London team. Let's give it a watch. Support the homegrown. Support the boys from the good old UK." And then they turned on the stream, and the teams come out, and the London team is literally all Korean nationals. And they were like, "What the fuck is this? There's not a single. They're not like British Koreans. Literally guys born and raised in Korea, no British citizenship, no British heritage." Not even like one or two guys. The entire team was just straight up South Koreans. And they were like, what is this bullshit? So the Overwatch League is not profitable. Overwatch as a game is almost certainly profitable. But the league is a massive money sink. And essentially, an executive comes to Jeff Kaplan and says, okay, you need to make up for it. We're burning so much money on this esports league, and Overwatch is going to pay for it. Not that we need to make the league more profitable. Overwatch needs to be more profitable to offset the losses of our other, it's like so fucking moronic. We have the money loser and the money maker, and the money maker must suffer. And he basically gave him an ultimatum and said, this is according to Kaplan, if you do not hit such and such revenue targets, which we don't know those numbers, he didn't disclose, I think he legally can't disclose them, but if you don't hit these revenue numbers, we will lay off 1,000 people. 1,000 people. That's genuinely insane. I don't even think the Overwatch team is 1,000 people. So this is basically, it can't be. This has to be like mostly people from the esports division. This is an unbelievably unfair position to put Jeff Kaplan in. He is responsible for Overwatch, the game. You guys did the esports thing. And then you come to him and say, if you don't double, triple, quadruple, whatever, your profits, we're going to lay off people in a completely different department, and it's going to be your fault. Like, it's absolutely insane. It's such a scumbag. He calls it the biggest fuck you moment he's had in his career. And, oh my god. So the Overwatch League disbanded in 23. And from the start to the end, the Overwatch League was the greatest albatross around the game's neck. He goes into some very interesting behind the scenes details because basically everything in Overwatch had to suffer in order to offset the weight of the league. Design time, balance time. They had to monetize it more aggressively. The whole Overwatch 2 fiasco was partially, according to him, all of these resources are being funneled into trying to fix the fucking Overwatch League, which will never, ever be profitable in a million years. And funny, wouldn't you know it, the league is dead. Overwatch 2, this kind of mangled project, finally comes out and they can start actually working on the game again. And from what I understand, the game is as good as it has ever been. They had to, like, the balance team had to be like whipped into shape to fit the esports spectator experience. They couldn't design around what makes a fun game to play. They had to design around what makes a more fun game to watch. And then that definitely did not work, because I've heard of the horrible, like, fucking tank metas that Overwatch went through, where the game was just abysmal at a high level. Basically everything suffered because of this. Blizzard essentially used the whole sex abuse thing to quietly kill the league, like, with a little bit of dignity, which is kind of funny because it was because it was the sex abuse scandal. But essentially, they just sort of quietly, oh, it's not renewed, you know, a lot of things happening, and then it never came back. So, like, you know what the funniest thing related to the shuttering of the Overwatch League was? I remember this Bellular news video. They do a lot of Blizzard coverage. They talk about MMOs and stuff. I like them. They're British chaps. They did this fucking video. Like, they have been devoted to Blizzard for, like, their entire... Like, they are Blizzard guys. And this sex abuse thing is happening. And it's coming down. You can tell it's really hitting them hard. Like, they care a lot about this billion dollar company. And they hit this point where they're just, like, laughing. They hit this point in their news episodes where they're covering this shit and just, like, And I remember this one video where the main guy has to say, like, with a heavy heart, we must announce the Overwatch League will no longer be featuring Cheez-Its Crunch Time. Cheez-Its Crunch Time was this sponsored segment they would do on the Overwatch League where when the action was getting really intense, they would transition to Cheez-Its Crunch Time. And they would have like this big overlay, but the intro animation for the overlay like covered up 90% of the screen, and it took like 5 seconds. So by the time that it was over, like half the team fight had already like finished. It was already like wrapping up. It would just be Cheez-Its Crunch Time. And then it would just be like nothing. It's Cheez-Its Crunch Time will no longer be featured in the Overwatch League. Yeah, it was a very convenient time for sponsors to pull out because there was no way they were making their money back on that shit. The viewership was abysmal as far as I understand. There's a whole big conversation here about esports. The kind of folly of esports. Esports, I don't think, will ever be nearly as big as traditional sports. For one of the simple reasons is that there's so many esports, right? And there's the big ones. But the genre is, or the medium, the industry is shifting so often. You know, people have been playing football for generations. People have been playing fucking, I don't know, badminton for generations. I don't know what badminton. Golf. Soccer. Swimming, you know? We've been swimming since the womb, dude. You think that Warcraft 3 is going to be something we've been doing since before the womb? No way. So there's like there's this lack of generational buildup. Like most people are introduced to sports by their parents, right? Like my dad loves football and basketball, and he got into soccer because of my brother. My little brother played soccer throughout his childhood, and my dad started. I think he always had like a side interest in it, but that became like a game that he started watching a lot of. And then, you know, that stuff would have been introduced to me had I not been a fucking nerd. It was introduced to me technically, and I rejected it resoundingly. Actually, weirdly enough, apparently I was a really sporty, athletic kid when I was like 5 years old, and then I discovered the computer, and I never looked back. Yeah, there's just a lack of real foundation. And also a kind of a lack of money, to be honest. Like the money you make back. The business model has never quite made sense at scale. At the scale that they want it to be at. Because really, sports don't make money on their own. The whole model of sports is these guys are really good at playing the game. People are already invested in the game. Therefore, they are willing to pay for tickets and live broadcasts where things can be like the ticket sales can subsidize like a bunch of stuff, like the that thing. They're also serving ads during like, you know, in-person games. There's sponsorships. There's things on the side. There's and then the for the TV broadcasts. That's where like the real money is, because of advertising. It's entirely propped up by advertising. The players are just basically entertainers to get you in the seats, either at home or in the stadium, to look at ads. That's where all the money comes from. That and like, eventually get into like TV deals and stuff like that. And this entire infrastructure does not exist for esports. They are almost always live streamed on platforms like Twitch or YouTube. And they do have some commercials, but not nearly to the extent that like traditional sports are commercialized. And they don't have the sheer number of eyeballs. There are big games that people are willing to watch, but not on like consistent enough of a basis. There's an NBA season, and tens of thousands of people might tune in to see any given game, like multiple times a night. And like, yeah, people might watch League of Legends, the Worlds, but what about just like the regular game? What about just like the regular season games that they have? Like probably not quite as many. Maybe, for CSGO, Evo is like the biggest fighting game tournament, and the big majors get decent viewership, but like how many people are watching the local tournaments or the larger locals? Do we call them super locals? I don't think so. It's not a terrible term. Or like I don't know, like the online tournaments, like the TNS tournaments or stuff like that. Not as many people. It's a much more niche crowd. Which is why it's always like oh my god, the fucking esports thing with the money. Talking about Evo. Oh god, I don't even want to talk about that. I don't even want to talk about that right now. But that's kind of like the heart of the grassroots thing is this whole thing is propped up not because it makes advertisers a bunch of money. It's because we all like playing these damn games. And we like watching people play them as a community. That's like the core of it. Esports, the impact of esports on video games has been kind of dreadful, I think, at large. And I'm saying this as someone who used to love the concept of esports. That was so exciting to me as a kid. Oh my god, you can get paid to be really good at video games. And seeing all of the effects of the way that it impacts things like monetization, things like game balance. Dude, like Street Fighter V got fucked by the esports mentality. We can't make anything too strong or it's going to look bad on the fucking esports broadcast. Not on E-League. Also, oh my god, the whole culture of shifting away from casual play to competitive play has seriously eroded a lot of online communities. Like, yeah, casual play could be very toxic, but like competitive, how do I put this? The focus on esports makes people really high strung. This was a thing I watched happen year over year playing League of Legends, where the more they pushed the competitive angle about like, you could be the next Faker, the more like of like the worst type of competitive guy became a common occurrence in League, where people only really cared about winning. They hated playing like off meta strategies. This whole mindset like infects ranked as well. I guess it's a little more viable in ranked because you are ostensibly playing there to win. Oh my dude, I have a whole fucking side thing about. I was thinking about the League of Legends matchmaking system yesterday on the bus, and just getting like pissed off. Oh my god. I kind of want to move on to another thing, but that's my general point. This could make for a whole big like video discussion about the negative impact of esports across the gaming industry for something that literally does not and will not ever make money. I'd like to point me to one single esports thing that has been esports league that has been profitable, like actually profitable. Yeah. I want to talk about some things I watched. We watched Hoppers. Kat has been super excited for Hoppers, the new Pixar beaver movie. And she's been going through a beaver phase recently, which I don't mind. Beavers are a very cute, very cool animal, honestly. They're a really cool animal. I like learning about them. Hoppers was cool. I liked it. I thought it was I did call it God mode when we walked out of the theater. I had a very good time, I'm going to be honest. This is probably like one of the better Pixar movies in recent years. It's got a really strong, it has a strong plot, specifically plot. There was a couple moments during this film that my hands were up and I was like, what the fuck is happening? What the fuck is going on? I'm going to spoil Hoppers because I want to talk about it, but I'd recommend it if you're in the market for Pixar movies. Yeah, it's about this girl. I think she's like in college. She's like 19, named Mabel. And she loves nature. She loves the outdoors and she loves like preservation and stuff. And she's always getting into fights with the Mayor Jerry, who is always trying to like build stuff and cut through the natural environment and not preserve it and stuff. And she ends up getting her brain or her consciousness, her mind, whatever, put into the body of like a robotic beaver. It's like a perfect imitation of a beaver that the other animals can't tell is a robot. And it lets you communicate with animals and understand them. They call it hopping. And she's like, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go talk to the animals and tell them about this. There's this highway that they're going to build and they like destroyed this beaver dam. And I'm going to go into the body of a beaver and convince the other beavers to like come back and build up the dam. Because if the animals are in the ecosystem, then like I think legally they can't, because of laws or whatever, they can't build there. And then what follows is a bunch of crazy shit. She basically she gets in with the Beaver King, wonderful fellow named George. And he's the Mammal King. And then they call a meeting. She's like, dude, the human beings, they're going to kill you. Fuck humans, am I right? And George's like, oh my God, this is terrible. We got to call together all the different animal kings. And so, like, it's all the different, like, animal classes. It's, like, insects and reptiles and amphibians. They all come together for a meeting. And Mabel successfully sells them on the idea that if you don't stop the human beings from building this highway, they're just going to start, like, encroaching on more and more of your land. And all of the animals are like, oh, my God, you're right. We need to kill all of them. And she's like, what? I kind of know those. Like, I also live this. She doesn't say this, but she's like, I live there too. I'm a human being too. And they're like, we're gonna fucking kill all the human beings. We're gonna kill Mayor Jerry. And she's like, I don't know about that actually. And they're like, what, are you gonna pussy out now, bitch? And like the insect queen, this butterfly, gets all up in her face and starts freaking her out, and she panics and she just smashes the insect queen between her paws and kills her instantly. And everyone in this meeting and all of like the animal onlookers are like, oh. It's crazy. So she has to escape with George, and they're like, we got to stop them from killing Jerry. Like, that's not the solution. So there's a scene where Jerry is driving down the highway, and all these birds, like, this was my favorite shit in the movie. There's like these birds, and the birds have lifted a shark out of the ocean, and they are flying it the wrong way down the highway, and they're gonna kill him with a shark. the finale of the, like, it's this crazy, it's not even the climax, it's just this crazy action scene. The finale of the movie is that there's like the successor to the insect queen is like her shitty chud son, who's a caterpillar who turns into a butterfly. And he gets his mind put into a robot Jerry. And the mayor is actually a robot, and he is controlled by this butterfly. It's a monarch butterfly, haha. And they are going to kill 1,000 human beings with sonic weaponry. It's crazy. I think that of all things, the environmental messaging, it's kind of going somewhere. It's got a few holes in it. I like the general idea that I think that the main message I took from it is that humans and animals need to be able to coexist with each other, and that we can like build things and stuff, but still live not fucking up nature, like not harming the environment. We can live in tandem with the environment. It's just because we don't care or we're actively spiteful to the environment that the harm is done. I think that's like the main message, but they sort of like skim over I think they try in the ending. They're like, okay, well, the highway gets built. It's just redirected somewhere else. And it's not clear if that's like not a place that would affect more wildlife or what. But it's like, I wish we got a few more details on that. I think the idea was, okay, we can come to a compromise. We can build the highway, but it's not going to be disrupting the glade, which is like that's what she's trying to protect. I think that's the idea. I wish it was given a little more detail, but I like the overall message, you know. I generally like that. Maybe it could have been more like, I don't know, eco-terrorist. It could have been a little more Final Fantasy VII. But I don't know. It's a Pixar movie. I'm fine with it. Generally, I actually found it pretty funny. There's there's just some crazy shit that happens in this film. I liked the detail that the animals are depicted like animals until we're meant to be seeing them from the perspective of like Mabel as an animal. Like I was a little like, are they gonna talk? And then, you know what this reminded me of? The Wild Robot. The Wild Robot was another film which honestly kind of felt more like a Disney movie, and Hoppers kind of felt like a DreamWorks movie, but they were switched. Isn't that odd? But Wild Robot was another movie that had a kind of an ecological, not actually that much of an ecological message. It was more of a, I'm thinking about the way it depicted animals, which at first I was like, I don't really like that the animals, do we have to make the animals talk for the kids? That movie, I remember eventually kind of like the way they did it, I was able to accept it. Hoppers also kind of justifies it a little more, where when you're not hopped into the beaver, or you have the little earpiece that lets you understand the beaver, the animals are depicted as these little beady-eyed little critters. But then they get like big expressive cartoon eyes, and they can speak once you're in the animal zone. Mentally, of course. So I like that. The beavers are cute. I just had a good time with it. It was neat. That was Hoppers. I debated on doing a check-in segment for Stone Ocean. We're about 12 episodes away from the end of part 6 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Stone Ocean. But there was some stuff that I kind of wanted to talk about, and some general thoughts I have on most of the part, some of its strengths and weaknesses. And I will definitely have more to talk about when we get to the end. I like to do more of a thematic thing, but I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the more technical sides of Stone Ocean that I have a problem with, and some of the stuff that I like. So, Part 6 has always had a bit of a mixed reputation. It tends to be ranked like around near the bottom of a lot of people's lists. And I definitely get it. I don't think there's any truly bad JoJo parts. There's some that are a little weaker for myself. Most people cite like part 1 is kind of weak just because it's very early and rough. Even though there's a lot of good stuff in that in part 1. I think part 6 is very uneven. That's what I've come to realize about it from the anime. There's like, when I say uneven, I was really shocked to learn that part 5 and 6 have almost the same amount of chapters. I might have found this out on the podcast. But I just remember part 6 being much longer. And I brought this up to a friend who likes part 6, and she was like, I could have sworn it was way longer than part 5. No, it's about the same. I think that the biggest weakness of part 6 is the core group. Really the core group dynamic. And this is it's an issue because I think that part 6 is sandwiched between 5 and 7, which both have, I would say, one, amazing fights overall and amazing character dynamics. 7 is obviously based more on like the duo of Johnny and Gyro, but 5 has like the whole squad. I think it's the strongest squad dynamic in the whole series. Maybe I feel like part 9 might eclipse it at some point because part 9 is really good so far. And that has a really strong core group of characters. But 5 was almost like the golden standard for the longest time. You get to part 5, and within like one scene, I talked about this, you basically get how everyone interacts with each other. You get how everyone fits into the group, how everyone feels about each other. And it's so satisfying not just to see that, but to watch their relationships evolve, like namely with like between like Giorno. It's so satisfying to me to watch Mista and Giorno's relationship go from, you know, kind of not trusting him to, by the end, Mista is literally Giorno's top dog. He's his right-hand man when he becomes the mafia boss. And part 6 is kind of really lacking in that. And I say that because what's frustrating about it is I actually like a lot of the characters individually. Man, I really like Jolene. She's such a cool like successor to Jotaro, but she's totally her own thing. I think Hermes is cool. I like that Hermes is very practical, which is honestly kind of nice to have in a JoJo character. She's not that weird. She's more grounded and yeah, she's got more of like a realistic mindset. Foo Fighters is my goat. R.I.P. Foo Fighters. Of course, I'm gonna be spoiling all this shit. Foo Fighters is an awesome character. We just got to the episode where she died. And man, it really stirred something in me when like among her last words is when she says, "Jolene, I truly lived a life." And I was like, "Oh, fuck. I love this funky plankton lady." Just such a classically weird JoJo character. So many like charming little bits that she has with the having to drink the water. And even like the interactions that she has with the group, I find the whole dynamic between her and Anasui really fun. Yeah, like she's a real highlight for me. I like Anasui enough as a character. He's really funny. Anasui has a lot of funny moments. I kind of like, because he's sort of introduced to you as this guy, as this murderer. This sort of, I don't know. He's got something. I don't want to say sociopathic. That's probably not accurate. He's just like a weird murderer. His whole like complete infatuation with Jolene, which is pretty relatable. His stand is really cool. I love during the Bohemian Rhapsody arc, he's super invested in the fact that like Disney should have Mickey Mouse. And when Disney does, when the billboard for Disney, this is in the manga, they don't They can't legally mention this in the anime, unfortunately. But he gets all pissed off that the billboard for Disneyland doesn't have Mickey Mouse on it, and he gets like really upset. He's like, this shit ain't Disney. Weather Report is also a cool character. I like his stand. The fact that he's always kind of whispery and quiet. He's a little dry at the start because he doesn't have he's lost his memory, right? But the more time you spend with him, he's got a lot of cool moments, and the way he kind of comes in clutch a couple times is really neat. The weather powers. Weather Report might be one of the coolest stands in the series, with just how flexible it is, and it's just a way for Araki to like drop weird weather facts on you. It's great. Like, it's a fun, and Borio's cool too. He's there. Little boy. He's voiced by the same voice actress as Anya from Spy Family, and Kat finds that very distracting, but it's pretty funny. And I like these characters individually, but they just never spend that much time together. They do, but in kind of weird groups. I think in that sense, the setting kind of does the story a bit of a disservice. The fact that it's in a prison and the men and the women have to be split apart means that, like, I think I don't even... Does Hermes even meet Anasui? Does she meet Weather Report? I genuinely can't even remember until like near the very end. There's it's like, when I say uneven, I mean like the character relationships, they don't spend that much time together. They don't really have a group dynamic. It's almost like split. There's a dynamic between, I would say, well, Jolene meets all of them. So she does have relationships with everybody. But it's kind of like there's like Jolene, Hermes, and Foo Fighters. And then Anasui and Weather kind of split apart. Emporio's kind of in the middle, but you don't see him actually interacting with Anasui or Weather that much. Foo Fighters has a bit of a temporary weird relationship with Anasui. Weather Report rejuvenates her a few times. I don't know. It's just like I like all the stuff with Weather and Anasui hanging out, but you don't get that till after like the punishment ward arc. You don't get that until like they get out of the prison and they're running around fucking Orlando. Which I really like that part. I really enjoy the whole like Florida setting. Something about it just feels humid and weird. It's a very different setting for JoJo. There's a lot of I really like the dynamic that all the characters have of being on the run now, and they've really gotta stay out of sight. And it's this really like extended portion while you've got the countdown to the new moon. It's cool. I really do enjoy the back third of Stone Ocean quite a bit. I like the first third and the last third. And in the middle, it gets kind of weird. And that's, I guess, the other thing. Besides the group dynamic being pretty weak, I think that Stone Ocean kind of suffers from weakness in some of its fights, which again is very sad. It's very difficult being sandwiched between 5 and 7 in that regard, which have some of the most legendary arcs in the whole series. And I was trying to think of what is actually wrong. Like, what is my real problem with the Part 6 fights? At first, I kind of chalked it up to them feeling very convoluted and Araki over-relying on exposition. But then I think about it, and, there's some other fights that also kind of do that. it's it's a little worse in Stone Ocean because I don't know why. He must have been reading some science books or something. He gets really into the physics-based powers in part 6. There's a lot of physics-based things that use like hang on, are there? He's a little more into it in part 6 at least. There's a lot of fights that have a lot of exposition. Like we need a quick lesson about centrifugal force and feng shui and the whole survivor backstory. Actually, I feel kind of I actually don't know. I'm saying all this, but when I say it out loud, I'm like, I don't know if that's actually a very strong point. I realize I'm realizing. I think the real problem might not be the exposition or the concepts or all that. I think it's really the villains themselves. I think a lot of people focus on like the powers of the stands, but rarely the actual like antagonists wielding them. And that's sort of I think that's kind of, now that I think about it, a real strong suit of JoJo's in general. Araki's writing style is kind of optimized for the way that he likes to write characters. Araki rarely gives his characters too much development. He's more on the side of revealing things to you about them. And that works when the whole structure of your story is that every couple chapters they run into a new character who exists for one fight and then is knocked out or dies or whatever. And I think to like the part 5 minor antagonists, Pesci and Prosciutto, Giacchio, fucking Melone, Nero, Chocolata and Secco, like all of these, like some of the early guys are kind of forgettable, but once you really get into like the Hitman Squad and beyond, even like Tiziano and Squalo, the Clash and Talking Head guys, have a very memorable dynamic when they're all like homoerotically touching up on each other all the time. Totally straight, confirmed straight, by the way. And then in part 7 has like no shortage of great minor villains and memorable characters and stuff. Fucking Ringo, Wekapipo, Diego every time Diego shows up, it's great. He's like this consistent rival character. There's actually not that many fights in part 7, funny enough. It's got a lot of like characters I really like watching. And part 6 is really lacking in that regard. I think about like Highway to Hell. What is his name? Thunder McQueen? Crazy that preceded Cars. Thunder McQueen, like I fucking hate that guy. Dude, he's so annoying. And then the other, weirdly, like all of Hermes' fights, which she gets like 2, are against like very similar like blonde characters to me. Which is Speed, Max Speed. Weird that now I'm thinking of Cars again. Yeah, seems like Speed Matt. What the fuck is that with that? But he, also a character like, okay, I get like, he's got this backstory of being like a criminal who killed her sister and all that, but I don't know, that arc is fine. And then like, damn, like you put it on paper and you're like, it's a stand that takes corpses and turns them into invisible zombies, and it's called Limp Bizkit. And you're like, that should be fun and goofy and weird. And then, I don't know, the fight itself is kind of like, meh? There's just like something kind of missing from it. And I'm not sure exactly what it is. Just the way that it progresses. The pacing of a lot of fights in part 6 is strange. They don't quite ramp up in the crazy way that a lot of other fights in the series do. Oh my god. So people hate the Dragon's Dream arc. And funny enough, I never hated it I never really disliked it that much when I first read the manga. And watching it in the anime, I think it's actually better in the anime. They cut down on the exposition a little bit. You don't get quite as many just pages upon pages of fucking backstory and exposition about how feng shui works. I think that the concept of a neutral stand that just is kind of an indicator for the flow of feng shui that the user then exploits due to his like martial arts knowledge is actually a really cool blending of like innate physical skills with a stand ability. I like that idea a lot. Also, the whole feng shui thing is sort of a precursor to a lot of the ideas, the concepts he introduces much later into like part 7 and 8 with positive and negative flows and all that, which is like, I think, super important to the themes of the series overall, but he kind of like tests it out with the feng shui fight. Yeah, but I thought that one was fine, actually. I didn't mind it. And I think part of it is that I thought that the villain was kind of fun. Like a weird cult leader martial artist feng shui assassin. And then you get to Yo-Yo Ma. And I always thought Yo-Yo Ma was way worse than Dragon's Dream. It is slightly better in the anime, but I remember being almost bewildered in the manga, where I'd have to go back and reread it, and maybe I'm just a total idiot, but I felt like I was like, are there pages missing? Are there like pages or panels missing here? Like, what is happening? Sometimes Araki's panel-to-panel storytelling is kind of weak. He does really well. He excels in a number of ways, but his moment-to-moment, panel-to-panel like ability to convey information is, I don't think, has ever been his strongest suit. And occasionally, while reading the manga, I just have what's happening sections. You kind of have to understand it in the like what's happening in the abstract and then connect the dots. But yeah, that's another aspect. Again, it's slightly better in the Yo-Yo Ma arc. Like, I did basically understand what was going on, but you get these weird moments where they're like hiding. The guards on the boats are driving towards them through the water, and they don't look that far away, and they're on like fan boats, which go decently fast. And then Yo-Yo Ma is like, we'll disguise our boat. And he goes through this entire process. And it's like, are you sure they're not already there yet? Like, I get that in JoJo, talking is a free action. A character will trip and spit out an entire 5,000 word monologue on the way to the ground. But sometimes there's just these weird moments where it's like, how fast is this character actually able to do this? That I just find kind of, especially in the manga where it just happens. Like, Yo-Yo Ma builds a chair out of sticks in between panels. And it's like, how long did that take? This might seem silly, but it's just like weird little things like that that bug me. Also, they do this thing in the anime that I don't know why this is such a common thing in anime, but it kind of like, I feel like they kind of started doing it in part 5 as well, but doing like random black screens in between shots, I've always really disliked as like a directing choice. This is like a weird like modern anime thing where you can't just cut to the next shot or do like a J cut with the sound or something. They put like a fragment, like 2 black frames, and I've always found that kind of like visually aggravating, and like, I don't like it. It's like, I don't like getting flashbanged with black. I like a lot of things about part 6 though. I do like a lot of things. Again, I enjoy a lot of the characters. Some of the stands have really cool ideas. I like the prison setting, even though it does serve to split the characters up more often than not. Oh, dude. That's another, like, okay, sorry to go back to negatives, but like, talk about unevenness. Hermes goes through the Limp Bizkit fight, and then she's in the fucking hospital for like 5 arcs. It takes her forever to get... She doesn't get better until after fucking Jailhouse Lock. It's so late into the part that she comes back. Why is she just taken out Kakyoin style, taken out of the plot for so long? At least Stardust Crusaders had the sheer length and number of arcs to sort of feel like, okay, well, you kind of feel like you get to see a lot of all these characters. Yeah. I'm glad that we're actually into the final stretch with the Sons of Dio and all that, because I actually like those fights quite a bit, and I think that this part's actually really strong from here on out. Again, it's kind of uneven, but I like the characters. Some of the stands are cool. Stone Free is a great stand for a main character. I like the fact that I like all the different ways that she gets to use it. It's one of those really classic JoJo abilities where it doesn't seem that strong at first, but Jolene finds all these really ingenious ways to use it. There are even more crazy ways that she will use it to come that I remember from the manga. I do like the prison setting, like I said. I think that it's a really unique dynamic that it lends to like how the characters have to go about their day-to-day lives. I wish it was a little less compressed in the anime. It takes a little bit more time in the manga. I remember that. There's some great fights. Marilyn Manson is a great fight. That's the first really good one, I think, in the part. I'm going to talk about it when we finish it, but I do really like Poochie as a villain. I think that this is another thing that I'm realizing. But another kind of issue with the with parts. I hate to be so down on it, though I generally don't think it's a bad part. Poochie, I think, is a really interesting villain, but you don't actually learn like what his full complete deal is until really, really late in the part. Like, again, we're in the home stretch, the last couple like series of generals before we get to the big finale. And I'm like, man, we still haven't gotten Poochie's backstory. We've gotten the flashbacks to him with Dio, but there is a ton of character informing stuff that we learn about him in a couple episodes. And we're like, again, in the home stretch. And I think Poochie is actually a really interesting character when you take into account his motivations, why he feels that way, what actually drew him to Dio and made him so infatuated with him as a character, as like an idol. The actual, like, we don't even know what heaven is at this point in the story. It's just a vague, ominous, evil plan that the characters, I guess, should stop. Once you learn what it is and like you put all that stuff together, I think he's a really interesting character. And he's kind of underrated among a lot of JoJo fans because you spend so long with him just kind of being the generic villain guy. He's a generic kind of evil priest character. It's interesting that he knew Dio, but you don't know enough about him to be really invested until very close to the end. This is also something that happens in part 8 with that part's, I'll say, final villain. But, yeah, like another character who I think is better on rewatch when you actually have context for why he is the way he is. And then you get to part 8's the same thing where you're like rereading part 8. I'll try not to spoil stuff if anyone hasn't caught up. But rereading part 8, I had several moments near the end where I was like, oh, this is about this guy. Okay, this all makes sense. This actually adds to the character now. But on your first, it'll make sense when you get to part 8. On your first reading, or I guess maybe eventual viewing, we should get one. We should get an anime. Yeah, I can see why the villain comes off very weak, because you just don't have enough context for stuff that he's doing, or you don't even realize that it's him doing stuff. Anyway. Part 6, Stone Ocean. Yeah. I will have more to talk about, and hopefully more positives to talk about. I kind of want to get this all off my chest once we go into the much stronger final third of the part, in my opinion. And I'm really interested. I'm really excited to actually see. Okay, this is one of the other things. I never ended up. Oh, I don't even think I talked about this before. I never finished the Part 6 anime. Because of this has been talked to death. But it's because it's true. The way that Netflix released Stone Ocean was fucking abysmal. It basically killed all hype for the series. They decided to do it in 3 different batches. Batch 1 came out. We watched it. Like, I watched it with a friend. And then batch 2 would not hit for 8 months. Like, dude, come on. By that point, you're so, like, I just wasn't in the mood. Like, I was totally out of the story. I would have had, I was like, JoJo's is really something you gotta kind of, I think that JoJo helps when you kind of go through it all at once. And you sort of just let Araki take the wheel. Having a big gap in between releases like that just kills all, like, you're not in the right mindset. You're not in it's all the momentum. It's the audience engagement. And at that point I was like, I read the manga. I don't need to watch the anime, whatever. And I just kind of kept this for the longest time. I haven't even, until this last stretch, I hadn't even seen the openings to Part 6. Sorry, the second opening to Part 6. I didn't even see that. Heaven's Falling Down. I hadn't even heard the song. I intentionally kept myself in the dark because I was like, when we finally do go through this, I kind of want to have an initial reaction to it. I kind of want to experience it like it's new. This is new JoJo content for me. It's not very often that you get that I get new JoJo content. Well, soon we will. Hey, I do like that opening. You know what I will say is that it kind of did help the community a little bit to tone things down. JoJo did have a very large, annoying community of people who wanted to talk about the show / manga, but had never actually read or watched it. They just knew it through memes and were not really interested in talking about the series in, like, for what's actually interesting about it. They just kind of wanted to share memes and stuff. And as someone who's really invested into it, that got kind of grating to me after a while, where it's like, I actually do want to talk about the interesting writing and the interesting characters and themes that track throughout the series. JoJo's, in many ways, you could read it as like an epic. You can read it as like an epic story. And that's like I read this whole like really interesting perspective on it that analyzed it as like a classic literary epic. And like that stuff's super interesting. Like that's the stuff I actually want to talk about when it comes to the series, or Araki's influences. You know, those are super fascinating artistically and writing wise. I mean, the man has so many goddamn interviews, so much interesting stuff that you can glean. He's a really interesting person, and it's like I want to talk about that stuff. I don't want to talk about like it's like okay, yeah, let's rehash the same 5 memes over and over again. I want to talk about Part 8. No one's read Part 8. I like Part 8 a lot. Yeah. Okay, finally, I'm going to cap this off with some games that I played. So, the demo for Vampire Crawlers came out. Creepy Crawlers came out. This is a Vampire Survivors spin-off. The first one that at least has a demo. There's going to be that Warhammer one that I'm excited for. That's like the in the Survivors style. But Vampire Crawlers is basically just taking the locations, weapons, characters, and stuff from Vampire Survivors and putting them into a roguelite dungeon crawler. That's roguelite deck-based deck builder dungeon crawler thing. So you might completely roll your eyes at that because it's a very overdone genre. And I would too, except for two simple things. Number one, I haven't really played any. Number two, I really like Vampire Survivors. So I cannot compare this to its compatriots in the genre, but I can say that I played the demo and I was really bummed out when it was over. I really, it has a fun gameplay loop. It's got a fun loop. You pick from various different Vampire Survivors characters with different like little skills and passives and stuff like that. And then you go through a dungeon that is a series of floors. Every single floor you start with a deck of only a couple cards, and then you gain cards every time you level up. You level up from killing enemies. You're given a few different cards, and it's got a very simple but really fun core like combo system. Basically, you've got a mana reserve, a mana supply, and then cards cost a certain amount of mana. It gets refreshed every turn, and you've got this resource to work with every single turn. When you play cards with ascending mana cost in order, you get bonuses to their effects. So they'll be like, it's like their effect will get doubled. Or I think even larger if it's like the higher the combo is. I can't quite remember. But you get a big bonus for it. And so every time you get a new hand, this is a little bit like Flesh and Blood. You have to figure out like the best combo you can do to maximize your damage. And that's really fun. It's a really fun simple premise. The more weapons you unlock, the more little interactions you can get. You are gradually building your deck every single dungeon. You don't save your deck and then go into a dungeon with it. It is you build it out like you're doing a run of Vampire Survivors. And you come up with like, I need more 0 costs to basically be my combo starters. And now I need like a 3 cost to be the big combo ender that hits a bunch of enemies for a million AoE damage. It's fun. I had a fun time with it. I am very excited for it. I'm probably going to dump a bunch of time into Vampire Crawlers. Check out the demo for yourself. Not very long. Took me... I have it up right here. I got to scroll back a little bit. 2 hours. Yep, about a 2-hour demo. And then I played Super Meat Boy. That's right, Super Meat Boy. The classic... Oh, God. Goodness. The now classic platformer, indie platformer darling by the guy who made the Mugenics game with Chris Chan in it. I just happened to get the game on sale before all that shit happened, and I got around to playing it kind of recently. And you know what? Super Meat Boy is a good-ass game. It's an entirely gameplay-focused experience. It's got a plot. The plot is kind of whatever. It's just sort of like, it's basically Super Mario Brothers. And then every single level is just Super Meat Boy getting put through the ringer, quite literally. Death traps and platforming challenges and new mechanics added, stacked on top of each other. Meat Boy himself, I think what really makes the game is how good he feels to control. It's really intense physics-wise. You can go really fast, and you have a lot of subtle control. Like, if you stop holding the shift button mid-jump, you will slow down a little bit. And it was a little bit... It was so physics intensive, and it was so precise. There was such a level of precision allowed to you that it was kind of unwieldy at the start, but once you kind of get a feel for it, it's really nice to make all these subtle changes in your aerial momentum and kind of like bob and weave around buzzsaws mid-jump and do all these things that feel very precise, but you get the hang of them and eventually it just becomes second nature. The level of difficulty as it steps up throughout the game, I think, is also pretty satisfying. I was able to run through most of the game pretty smoothly. I haven't beaten it. I'm on the boss of the 4th chapter, or the 4th world, the Hell World. I do not like the 4th boss. I've thought that the other bosses were just fine. I don't like the 4th one. It's just a memorization thing, and I just find it really tedious. But other than that, I'm sure that there's like the bonus Dark World levels. There's also like the 8-bit looking one. There's like the retro looking ones. I think they call it Super Meat World. That was very bewildering because that's just in like level 4. There's a portal that is almost impossible to avoid crashing into. And then you're taken to a completely different game on like level 4. That was very weird. I don't know if I would have done it like that, but yeah. It's good. It's a fun game. I've talked for this is one of those original. This is one of those like indie game the movie games. I always associate this with like Xbox Live Arcade. Oh, should I have talked about the new Xbox? I don't feel like it. The Xbox Live Arcade experience, which was kind of a really cool like experiment where they platformed all these independent games, and Super Meat Boy was one of them. I think it's well worth it. Yeah, it's a good game. It's fun. It's a solid platformer. Not a whole lot to say about it. It's got it has a very Newgroundsy style. It really took me back. The storytelling is so simplistic. I remember being a kid and thinking, I could probably make something like this. I'm going to cut this a little bit short from a typical episode because there's some stuff I want to do today. I'm on a little bit of a time crunch, just a little bit. But yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed listening to me ramble if you've listened this far. I have started work on the next video. It's going to be a really beefy one. It's going to be probably like the Mac gaming video. So I don't even know if it's going to come out this month because I got to do a lot of stuff for it. So be on the lookout for that in a while. Go check out the Alex Kidd video while you're waiting. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, but please phrase them in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. You can support me on Patreon if you like the main channel videos, and my coffee if you want to give me a little tip. And other than that, I am out of here. Bye.